A young man named Kinji Toyama. He attends a peculiar school where special detectives called Butei are trained. The intention is to mass-produce top-tier detectives who can put the criminals in their place. Now, while Kinji is indeed a student here, the kind of work he hates the most is the work of a Butei. Though maybe it's got something to do with his ability, which only ever activates when there's extreme sexual tension in the air. Anyway, let's go on with the story. Our boy misses the bus and is riding his bicycle to school when an interesting dilemma enters the chat. Apparently, his bike has a bomb attached to it, and if he so much as slows down, the bomb will simply explode. He can't just jump off either, because in that case, he'll be shot straight away. Fortunately, a twin-tailed girl named Aria Holmes Kanzaki saves him, but that takes us to the real plot of this anime. Circumstances result in both Aria and Kinji ending up pinned down in the gym storage room trying to escape from these enemies. When Aria struggles, her chest blooms in front of Kinji's face. This results in a massive load of testosterone racing within Kinji's veins, and that in turn lets him enter a state which we'll refer to as hysteria mode. The man's horniness had successfully unlocked Ultra Instinct, and he instantly takes care of the flustered Aria's attacks as well as the enemies. Well, that takes care of that. While at school, Kinji realizes that Aria is a transfer student, and by this point, Kinji had already made a way too interesting impression on Aria for them to not be aware of each other, which is probably why, later in the day, Aria unexpectedly shows up at Kinji's boarding room and orders him to be her slave. Okay, I agree, that must have felt too sudden. Anyways, Aria introduces and does indeed start treating him like her slave, making him do stuff and just hanging around in his vicinity as if she's a queen. Though when he makes her answer why exactly does she want him to be her slave, Aria finally gets to the point. What she really wants is for him to join her Butei party. Kinji had a lot on his mind, so he didn't oblige. But then Aria kicks him out of his room for not following her orders. He is frustrated and leaves for a while, but when he returns, something awkward happens. His caring childhood friend is at the door while Aria is taking a bath. The situation ends up taking care of itself for a while. As for later that night, he sleeps on one end of the bed while Aria on the other. The guy is contemplating quitting Butei altogether by this point. Morning comes around and Aria is still as persistent and bossy as ever. During the day, while Kinji searches for a missing cat, she keeps pestering him around. They eventually do find the cat though. Later, Kinji meets up with a friend named Riko and exchanges some sketchy games for information on Aria. Just what is up with this girl? When Kinji returns home, Aria once again pesters him for something, only this time it's serious. How his actual rank as Butei is supposed to be S, and the only reason he's an E is because he skipped the final exams. Her pestering intensifies as Kinji is finally forced to give in. He ends up going along with her demands and, more or less, joins her team. The following day, the duo learns of a bus hijacking and swiftly arrives on the scene. There's a bomb displaced on the bus, which Aria finds under the bus. Kinji, on the other hand, destroys the communication sensors. Now all that's left is to render the bomb useless. Fortunately, Reki, the sniper ace, was there to do just that. Aria got a little injured during the entire ordeal and was taken to a hospital, and once she reconsiders the entire situation, she feels rather underwhelmed by Kinji's capabilities. He failed to meet her expectations, at least for the time being. Now Kinji is sort of mentally exhausted considering how he keeps getting nightmares of his older brother's death. After composing himself, he ends up talking to Aria, who was on her way to speak with her mother. Apparently her mother is a prime suspect of the recent Butei killings. She has been sentenced to 864 years. Though if it makes anyone feel any better, the sentence will be shortened to just 742 years if she can prove her mother's innocence. But that's exactly why she needs a reliable partner. The following day, Kinji's childhood friend tells him how Aria is going back to London. He meets up with his friend Riko and asks for information regarding the Butei killer, and coincidentally, he learns that his brother's death is also related. At some point in the conversation, circumstances make Kinji feel his libido burning, which in turn lets him enter hysteria mode. As you know, whenever Kinji is sexually excited, he enters hysteria mode and basically becomes a Super Saiyan. Anyways, so now that he's in this mode, his enlightened instincts realize how Aria's plane might be in danger. So he rushes and somehow manages to get on right before it flies off. And before things go south, Kinji learns that Aria is scared of lightning. Alright, back to the Butei killer. The plane is hijacked, and as it is revealed, the one who hijacked his bike on day 1 and the one who did in that bus, as well as now this plane. All of them were done by his friend Riko. She's the great-granddaughter of Arsène Lupin, and her core reason for targeting Aria is just so she can surpass her grandfather's old man. This doesn't end here. She also lets him in on a lover's secret. Kinji's brother was her lover, and it was her who killed him. All of this, of course, leads to a heated duel between Aria and Riko. It begins, and shortly after, Riko appears to be the one with the upper hand. Though quite conveniently, when Kinji is trying to save Aria, he kisses her to not only activate his Ultra Instinct mode, but also calm the young lady. But Riko escapes when the situation is dire because the plane is about to crash. Though fortunately, thanks to team effort, the plane successfully emergency lands. In the aftermath of this fight, Kinji finally agrees to be the partner she needs in both name and deed. Though this does trigger jealousy in his childhood friend, Shirayuki. Side note here, just like how Riko is the great-granddaughter of Arsène Lupin, Aria just so happens to be the great-granddaughter of Sherlock Holmes, which explains Riko's reasoning behind trying to take her out in an attempt to surpass her ancestor. Now Shirayuki, Kinji's childhood friend and a special Butei who has psychic powers, is a force to be reckoned with, as Aria learns during their encounter. Later, Aria starts training Kinji's hysteria mode. You can probably expect what kind of training that could be, so let's get to what happens next. We have a complicated situation where Shirayuki might be getting targeted by a kidnapper called Durandal, who was interested in her unique Butei blood. Aria and Kinji become her bodyguards, and she also ends up moving into Kinji's place, which in turn starts creating a whole new wormhole of convenient moments for Kinji, now that two young and fine girls are living with him. A fake phone call results in Shirayuki barging in on him bathing. She gets flustered, and in order to make up for her mistake, she ends up taking off her clothes as well. Suddenly, Aria intrudes and Kinji has to run off. He ends up in the local river and gets a cold. An interesting day indeed. Still, as he recovers from his cold, he continues his libido training. They also kinda have an argument about whether Durandal is really out there or not. Shirayuki then exhibits her desire to watch fireworks, and so she goes with Kinji later that day. This does involve breaking the rules of the shrine though, but no, well. They have a good time, but Shirayuki receives a certain text message. She decides to not let anyone know about it, and their school days continue. However, the next day, Shirayuki is nowhere to be found. Kinji gets help from Reki in locating her, as it turns out she's been negotiating with the Durandal in the basement of a warehouse, probably trying to protect the school in her own silly way, because apparently the fake call and then the message, they were both from Durandal. Kinji does try to rescue her, but Durandal gets him in check instantly. Now Aria gets there sooner or later, but the warehouse had already started to flood at this point. Kinji tells her to follow Durandal while he himself tries to free Shirayuki, who was chained. Looks like they were running out of time, so Kinji simply kisses her and enters hysteria mode. A sudden gush of wave makes them end up on one of the upper floors as well as separates them. Kinji and Aria come across each other and then find Shirayuki, but it was just Durandal in disguise. This time she freezes Aria's hands and asks her to join the organization, but this gets interrupted because the real Shirayuki is also here. She heals Aria and then faces off against Durandal. This time she's serious, and it doesn't take long before they successfully apprehend her. Finally, after a hard day's work, a little drama to spice things up. Shirayuki casually tells Aria that she kissed Kinji, and this creates yet another spark of friction between them. Kinji wasn't gonna sit by and get his ass kicked, so he simply flees. Another day, another conflict. This time, Kinji is invited to Aria's room where she tries to lay her hands on him, but it's all too superficial, and yes, it was indeed not Aria, just Riko in disguise. She tries to awaken hysteria mode, but the real Aria enters the chat and verbally abuses Riko. They fight briefly before Kinji stops them, and then gets to the point. Aria wants Riko to testify for her mother, and quite unexpectedly, she complies. But on one condition. She wants them to retrieve a memento, which was stolen from her. Once successful, she'll testify for them. The next day, they are all in school. Riko is being awfully familiar with Kinji, which pisses off Shirayuki. So she makes Kinji take her to the nurse's office, where she tells him about the consequences of what they did on the fireworks festival and how she has to stay at the shrine for a month to make up. But even so, the naughty girl doesn't hesitate in trying to seduce Kinji there in the office. He flees through the window as always. Afterwards, Kinji and Aria meet up with Riko before discussing the plan to retrieve that memento. The idea is to sneak into her former leader's mansion as a butler and maid. A little context on her former boss. Looks like Riko's parents died and she was then taken in and raised by Vlad. Vlad is a serious threat in the sense that he's not even human. Durandal, or Janine, whatever you want to call her, tells Kinji that there are 4 marks on Vlad's body that need to be pummeled or destroyed, otherwise they have no hope of winning. After having this long talk with Jean, Kinji arrives at the infirmary where he was supposed to meet Riko, though the timing was a bit off because all the girls were having a physical examination. He quickly hides in the closet only to be discovered by Reki. A large white wolf appears to enter the scene, both Kinji and Reki chase after it, and in the end it ends up becoming Reki's pet. Finally, it's the day to carry out the plan. Aria's training to be a maid was also coming along just fine, or maybe not. Riko poses herself as an employment agency and introduces Kinji and Aria as butler and maid. Things do get awkward though when they realize how the caretaker at the mansion is their school teacher. The infiltration continues, and within 2 weeks, the duo finds out the location of that memento. And after discussing it all with Riko, they decide to execute the final aspect of the plan. While Aria distracts their teacher, Kinji sneaks in to get the memento and swiftly replaces it with a fake one. Just like that, they finally get Riko her memento back. But as tenacious as she is, the moment she gets it back, she once again declares war on them. How she has to defeat Kinji and Aria in order to surpass her ancestors. But while they were engaging in a friendly scuffle, Vlad had already tracked them down. It was their teacher all along. In fact, the whole teacher persona is Vlad's cover identity, which he uses to perform all sorts of genetic experiments on humans. He himself is a vampire, by the way. He suddenly initiates a wild vampire beast transformation and begins to severely overpower our protagonists. Bullets are ineffective, and Kinji barely manages to save Riko from Vlad's grip. Meanwhile, Aria repeatedly tries to somehow do damage to the marks on Vlad's body, as that's the only conceivable way to defeat him. Riko also tries to inform them about the 4th hidden mark, which is supposed to be on the center of his chest. Just like that, they somehow manage to attack all 4 weak points. Vlad is dropped to his knees but starts laughing hysterically as his body regenerates. Looks like that 4th point was a false alarm set up by Vlad himself. It is a tough situation. No time like the present for the hysteria mode to go wild. A little off track here, but Riko suddenly talks about how good Aria's sweet sweat smells and then starts licking her neck. This practically triggers an insane reaction within Kenji's libido and initiates hysteria mode yet again. The battle continues, and this time Kinji successfully manages to figure out the position of the 4th mark. It's on his tongue, and through teamwork, friendship, and a little exoticness, the 3 manage to kill Vlad. Vlad is defeated, and it's something that even Lupin couldn't pull off, which essentially means that Riko has successfully surpassed her ancestors. The duo congratulate her before she takes her leave, all content with what had happened. In the days that succeed this event, Aria makes Kinji accompany her to a shop so that she can buy a new swimsuit. When she comes out of the dressing room wearing a bikini, Kinji's attention is swayed. She hugs him and states how she was informed that Riko has agreed to testify for her mother. Aria glistens and happily dances around, but then her fake opie pads fall off, and you know the nature of this anime, Kinji gets slapped. Like always. And that's the end of the video. As always, if you liked what you saw, subscribe to the channel. I'll be uploading a lot of videos just like this, so I'll see you at the next one.